good grouse hunting up there as well.
And then
yeah.
Sheboygan and Rogers City, which would be Presque Isle, and northern Emmett, I understand is probably some of the best.
Yes.
In
just that your whole district is the place to hunt grouse.
Right, okay.
We wouldn't want to tell people that necessarily because
okay.
that's where people in the know like to hunt. But areas around Petoskey, through there, very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now pheasants in the old days used to be a very big sporting animal to shoot downstate. Has there ever been much pheasant hunting in northern Michigan?
Pheasant hunting is pretty limited in northern Michigan because it's mostly forest, and pheasants live in grasslands. Okay. So some of the things we do is work with other groups, Pheasants for other organizations like that, where we put in warm season grasses, some food plots kind of intermixed with that. Their home range is a little smaller, and so you want to have all those ingredients, food, water, cover, all in a fairly close area. Okay. And we've heard a lot about the good old days of pheasant hunting in Michigan, and truly they were the good old days of pheasant hunting. 1957, 58, millions of birds in the state. But things have changed.
Sure.
And in those days when we did research on pheasants and evaluated the habitat, we looked at the counties that were excellent, good to excellent. And those counties were actually places that you might not expect today. It'd be Monroe, Oakland, Wayne.
Really?
St. Clair County, and then obviously up into Thumb. Sure. Today the Thumb is still a core area down into Bay County. Okay. So there's been a lot of land use changes, sure. And there's a lot of things we don't know about pheasants, right. But there's a couple things we do, and we know that asphalt doesn't produce many pheasants.
Right, of course, yeah. Okay.
So again, it comes down to what do we do with land use across the boards, and we know some changes that have occurred from that. And as we look into the future, we may want to say, and we don't want this to happen to ruffed grouse or sure. woodcock in the more forested regions of the north. But it is interesting to look at that, and that for pheasants, that those counties were the excellent counties. Now, what today's core of pheasant habitat in Michigan is a sort of a diamond shape. Okay. If you went from Alma to Grand Rapids, down by Jackson up to Flint, and back up to Alma, and in the heyday of pheasants, that was considered to be fair to poor habitat. So today, that's some of our core habitat. So it's really like looking at apples and oranges, that old cliche of that. So we have good pheasant numbers in that area. In the places where people have put in grasslands, warm season grasses, switchgrass, a little blue stem, big blue stem, and followed the prescription of how to produce pheasant habitat, there are birds there. Wow. In places where you're mowing the grass short like this, or plowing up all the soil and having soil erosion attached to that, there aren't as many birds. So again, there's some things that we know, and we know the prescription of how to produce that, and that's the beauty of with the ruffed grouse. It is very cookbookish on how to produce grouse habitat. If you had a 40-acre block of aspen, and it was at the time where you wanted to harvest it, you would divide that into quarters, and every 10 years cut a quarter. So and you do it on a 40 to 60 year rotation. Right. I mean, it's as simple as that. And when you do that, you produce grouse. Wow. And sidelines of that is there's good good deer habitat. Sure. There are 71 different wildlife species, a whole suite of species that use aspen.
Isn't that amazing?
It is, because when you start to look at other habitat types, there are very few that have that many wildlife species associated with it. And again, that's why the habitat of aspen and the habitat that woodcock and grouse use are really key to many other warblers and just a variety of wildlife.
Well, it's amazing to me because it's the educational process. Because people say, "Oh, we've made this terrible clear cut." Well, within 2 to 3 years, it's bountiful with the type of wildlife that's there.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you go in and harvest off this aspen stand, and normally you would want to do that in the winter, so that's when all the nutrients for the tree is in the ground. And then you cut it. Now that whole root system is suckering out, and those new aspen are coming up. But within that first year, there are grouse using
Right.
the edge of that.
Sure.
Usually you get some raspberries or
Right, yeah,
berries coming
right.
up, some clovers around where the landings were for that particular site, and grouse like to use those. Within a couple of years, when those saplings are coming up the size of your thumb, then the woodcocks start to come into that and use that, and they use that for the first 10 years. So, and again, you get the rufous-sided towhees in there. It's
amazing.
it's a very complex system
Sure.
that some people tend to overlook because they say, well, when all the trees are cut down, it just looks ugly to me.
Yeah, I understand.
And we have to look beyond that.
Okay, now let's segue into it. I think we're on to the sort of the bigger animals, which would be like a turkey. And so, what are the? I understand there's what, Murmans and Easterns, and what are the types of species of turkeys in North America?
Yeah, there's quite a variety of them. There's the eastern wild turkey, which is found in Michigan, and basically it's the eastern wild turkey, so it's east of the Mississippi for the most part. Then we have the Merriam's turkey, which is found up in the mountains, Colorado, Wyoming, the Dakotas. There's the Rio Grande, which is found a little drier desert type areas, Texas, parts of Oklahoma, and then we have the Osceola, which is found in Florida, just down in the Florida. That's the only place it's located. There's the Gould's turkey, which is found in a few remnant populations in Arizona, and then mostly in the Sierra Madres of Mexico is where you would find that. And then there's the ocellated, which is found down in the Yucatan, Guatemala, down in that area. It's a more jungle type bird. And actually, these others are subspecies of the wild turkey. The ocellated is actually its own species of turkey. What it looks like is you took a turkey and it mated, crossbred with a peacock.
Oh,
and it
really?
has that, those eyes, the coloration. It's a beautiful bird.
So what I understand is that going back to the founding of this country, they were very plentiful, and I assume at some point in time in the state there was a lot of them, and then they get overhunted, or what happened to the decline and then sort of the rise of the turkey population?
Yeah, prior to European settlement in this country overall, turkeys were very plentiful. And as we began to settle and move westward, there were no grocery stores. I mean, people were living off the land. There was no Michigan Department of Natural Resources, no conservation ethic to speak of. And some of that did not evolve until, in more modern times. And in those days, everybody thought the resources were unlimited. And the reality is, we know today that they were not. And so with no laws or, like I said, agencies like the Department of Natural Resources to help manage wildlife, some were completely eliminated. And so in Michigan, as an example, prior to European settlement, there were turkeys found in Michigan. Over 94,000 birds were located, and that ancestral range of the bird was found, say, from a line from Bay City to Muskegon, south of that line. They were not found up in your district. They weren't found in the UP. But all those birds were located in the southern third of the state. And then, as again, people began to settle it. A turkey made a nice meal for everyone. So, prior to European settlement, the native people that lived here used the birds for food source. They used the turkey feathers for religious purposes, ornamentation. They actually used the spurs, the sharp, pointy spurs from the turkeys for arrowheads on their arrows. So, yeah, I mean, they used all of the bird. In fact, there are some historic records of quilts made from feathers woven in with other materials to keep people warm. So they did utilize the birds. But then again, as Europeans came in and began to settle the state and came in large numbers, we had to live off the land, and we did.
Okay, so in northern Michigan, the process, and I've screwed this up, say, on applications. How does that work? And do you go to the DNR website, or do you go to a sporting goods store, and how do you go about the application?
Oh yeah, well, so today we have tried to we've restored
Sure.
turkeys. I
Yep.
guess that's the point to
Right.
look at is
Right.
there were birds and then they were
Yeah,
completely
yeah,
eliminated
right.
by
Yeah.
1900.
Right.
And then it wasn't from 1900 until the 1950s and more recently in the 60s, there were no birds and we began to try to restore the population.
And so